It started with a sound, a barely audible whisper in the dark. I wasn't even supposed to be home. I had a work trip scheduled that night, but a massive storm grounded my flight, and I ended up driving back to the house. The kids were at my mom's for the weekend, and Amanda was supposed to be out with her best friend, Grace. When I walked into the house, it was eerily quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears and makes your skin prickle. I was halfway through the living room when I heard it, a voice, faint and muffled, coming from upstairs. At first, I thought Amanda must have left the TV on, but as I stood at the bottom of the stairs listening, I realized it wasn't a TV, it was a conversation. My heart pounded as I crept up the stairs, the old wood groaning under my weight. I didn't even know why I was sneaking around. It's my house. My stomach churned with an uneasiness I couldn't place. The voices were coming from our bedroom. Amanda's voice, clear and familiar though with a tone I didn't recognize, playful, almost teasing. And then, another voice, a man's voice. I froze. What the hell was going on? I should have barged in, demanded answers, but something held me back. Maybe it was the fear of what I'd find, or maybe it was the bizarre instinct to gather proof before making a scene. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and hit record. I pressed myself against the wall outside the bedroom, listening. It's risky, Amanda was saying, her voice low but animated. He could have been home tonight. The man laughed, a deep, casual sound. You said he's out of town. Besides, you'll just go back to him tomorrow like nothing happened. Isn't that the whole plan? Amanda sighed. I hate the lying. It's just. But you don't hate this. The man interrupted, his voice dripping with confidence. I couldn't take it anymore. My hand reached for the doorknob, and I shoved the door open. The scene hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Amanda was sitting on the edge of the bed, her hair messy, her face flushed. The guy, a broad-shouldered, smug-looking bastard, was leaning against the dresser, a knowing smirk on his face. For a split second, nobody moved. It was like we were frozen in some surreal painting, none of us knowing who would speak first. Amanda's face went pale. Eric, what are you? What the hell is this? I shouted, my voice cracking with a mixture of fury and disbelief. Amanda, who the hell is this guy? The man didn't flinch. If anything, he looked amused. I'm Dave, he said, as if we were meeting at a company picnic. Dave? I repeated, the name tasting bitter on my tongue. Of course, the work friend. Amanda stood up, her hands raised like she was trying to calm a wild animal. Eric, let me explain. This isn't what it looks like, really. I snapped, waving my phone in the air. Because it sounds like you've been planning this behind my back for a while. Go back to him tomorrow? Seriously? Dave smirked again, clearly enjoying the chaos. Relax, man. She cares about you and the kids. That's what she always says, right? She just needed a break. I lost it. My fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. You're standing in my house, disrespecting me to my face, and you expect me to just relax? Get the hell out of here before I throw you out myself. Amanda stepped between us, her voice shrill. Eric, stop. Just stop. You're overreacting. Overreacting? I barked, my voice echoing through the house. You've been sneaking around with him, and I'm the one overreacting? Dave shrugged, clearly unbothered. Look, I'll leave. This seems like a personal moment. He grabbed his jacket and strolled out of the room, pausing at the door to add, no hard feelings, man. As the front door clicked shut behind him, I turned back to Amanda. Her face was a mix of guilt and defiance. Start talking, I said, my voice low and steady, though inside, I felt like a volcano ready to erupt. But the words she said next weren't an apology. They weren't an explanation. They were something that would change everything. Amanda crossed her arms, the defiance in her eyes sparking to life like a match. You know what? Fine, Eric. You want the truth? I'm sick of pretending everything is perfect. Sick of carrying this marriage on my back while you sit there clueless. I stared at her, stunned. Carrying the marriage? Are you kidding me? I've been working my ass off for you, while you sneak around with Dave? She rolled her eyes and laughed bitterly. Sneak around? You're so dramatic. Do you even hear yourself? Dave actually listens to me. He doesn't treat me like some accessory to his boring life. Her words sliced through me like glass. Accessory? Amanda, we have 2 kids together, a life we built from nothing, and now you're saying that's not enough for you? She shrugged, her face unreadable. I'm just being honest. I care about you, Eric, I do, but I need more, something exciting, something that doesn't make me feel like I'm suffocating in suburbia. Suffocating. That word hit me like a gut punch. I thought about all the late nights I'd stayed up budgeting, the mornings I'd packed the kids' lunches while she slept in, the countless compromises I'd made to make her happy. And now, she was calling our life a prison. You're unbelievable, I said, my voice trembling with anger. You could have talked to me, told me how you felt, but instead you do this? You bring him into our house? Amanda's face hardened. What's the point of talking, Eric? Every time I try, it's like you're not even there, always on your phone, your laptop, your work. Do you even know what's going on with me? With us? I took a step closer, my hands shaking. Don't you dare try to flip this on me. I've been working to keep this family afloat, to give you the life you said you wanted. If you're unhappy, that's on you, Amanda, not me. Her lips curled into a mocking smile. Oh, please. Don't act like some saint. You didn't notice the distance because you didn't want to admit it. This marriage has been on autopilot for years. I clenched my jaw, trying to hold back the explosion brewing inside me. Autopilot? If that's how you feel, then why the hell are you still here? Her response was a dagger. Because it's easier. Because you're stable, and I know you'll always be here for the kids, no matter what. That's who you are, Eric. Reliable. Predictable. The words predictable and stable felt like insults in her mouth. I wanted to scream, to tear the room apart, but instead I stood there, rooted in place, staring at the woman I thought I knew. And Dave? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. What is he? Your escape from reality. She shrugged again, and that casual movement infuriated me more than any words could. He's fun. That's it. He's not a threat to you. He's not a replacement. He's just something different. I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. Different? Amanda, he's not a new pair of shoes. He's a man you've been sneaking around with while I've been busting my ass to make you happy. She sighed, like I was the one being unreasonable. I'm not leaving you, Eric. I care about you and the kids, but I need this. I need to feel alive again. Can't you understand that? I stared at her, my mind spinning. So what? You expect me to just accept this? To sit here like an idiot while you go off and feel alive with him? Her response was icy and matter-of-fact. I expect you to realize that this doesn't have to change anything. You can stay here, be with the kids, keep this family together, and I'll come back to you, always. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You really think this is okay? That I'll just sit here and play house while you do whatever the hell you want? Her expression softened, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of the woman I married. But her next word shattered that illusion. It's better than breaking up the family, isn't it? She said quietly. You don't have to like it. You just have to deal with it. And with that, she turned and walked out of the room, leaving me standing there in the wreckage of what used to be my life. The door slammed shut behind Amanda, the echo ricocheting through the house like a gunshot. For a moment, all I could do was stand there, fists clenched, chest heaving, her words repeating in my head like a curse. You don't have to like it. You just have to deal with it. Deal with it? How was I supposed to deal with the fact that my wife, had just admitted to carrying on with another man in our home, with the audacity to frame it as some kind of necessary self-care? I wanted to scream, to punch a hole in the wall, to do something. But instead, I sank onto the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, my heart hammering so hard it felt like it might break through my ribs. The silence of the house was deafening now. Every creak of the wood and groan of the wind outside seemed to mock me. This was my life. The life I had built with her. I stood up abruptly, the energy surging back into my body. I wasn't going to sit there and wallow while she acted like this was normal. I stormed out of the bedroom and down the stairs, the adrenaline fueling my steps. Amanda was in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of wine like nothing had happened. She looked up as I entered, her expression calm, even bored, like she was waiting for me to finish throwing a tantrum. "Get back to your evening. What are you doing?" I demanded, my voice sharp enough to cut through the room. She raised an eyebrow, taking a slow sip of wine. "I'm having a drink. Is that a problem now too?" Her nonchalance was like gasoline on a fire. "You don't get to act like this is normal, Amanda. You just admitted to cheating on me in our house, and you think you can just sip your wine and go about your night?" She sighed heavily, setting the glass down with a loud clink. "Eric, what do you want me to do? Cry? Beg for forgiveness? Because that's not going to happen. I've already explained myself. I don't know what else you want from me." "What I want," I said through gritted teeth, "is for you to understand what you've done to our marriage. To me. Do you even care, or am I just another thing you're bored of?" Her face hardened, her tone sharp. "Don't you dare act like this is all on me. You think you're some perfect husband? You've been emotionally checked out for years. You stopped paying attention to me a long time ago. Dave, don't you dare bring him into this," I snapped, my voice rising uncontrollably. "He's not some savior. He's a coward, a homewrecker, and if you think he actually gives a damn about you, you're delusional." Amanda's eyes narrowed, her voice icy. "At least he sees me. At least he makes me feel like I'm worth something. Can you even say the same?" Her words hit me like a slap to the face. My mind flashed back to the nights we'd stayed up late laughing about stupid things, dreaming about the future. Was that all a lie? Or had we just lost our way, too far gone to find our way back? I took a step closer, lowering my voice, though the anger was still boiling just beneath the surface. "If you're so miserable, Amanda, why are you still here? Why not just leave? Go be with Dave and his fun. See how far that gets you." Her lips curved into a cold, bitter smile. "Because I know what I'd be giving up. You, the kids, the house, the stability. I'm not stupid, Eric. I know where my priorities are." "Your priorities?" I repeated, laughing bitterly. "Is that what you call this mess? Prioritizing me and the kids by running off with him whenever you feel like it? I've kept this family together, Eric," she shot back, her voice rising now, "while you've been too busy being predictable. You should be thanking me for trying to find something that keeps me sane enough to stay." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She had twisted everything so completely, painted herself as the martyr in this nightmare she'd created. My hands were shaking, and for a moment, I didn't trust myself to speak. Finally I said, "You know what, Amanda? Maybe you're right. Maybe this marriage has been on autopilot. But if you think I'm going to sit here and let you destroy everything we've built, you're wrong. You want to play games? Fine. But don't expect me to play along." I turned and walked out of the kitchen, my footsteps heavy against the hardwood floor. Her voice followed me, dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, what? Are you going to run to your lawyer? Good luck explaining this without making yourself look pathetic." I stopped at the base of the stairs, her words hanging in the air like a challenge. I didn't respond, couldn't. I just kept walking, retreating to the bedroom. The storm outside mirrored the chaos inside my chest. I couldn't sleep that night. How could I? Amanda's words churned in my mind like poison, filling every corner of my thoughts. The quiet house felt suffocating. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out when it had all gone so wrong. Every memory felt tainted now. Around 2 a.m., I heard her footsteps. Amanda entered the bedroom without a word, sat on the edge of the bed, and lit a cigarette, a habit she'd sworn she'd quit years ago. The flickering orange glow lit up her face, and for a moment she didn't look like the woman I married. Can we talk? She said, her voice softer than before, but still laced with that unshakable edge. I sat up, rubbing my temples. About what? How you've decided to bulldoze our life? Or maybe how you're justifying all this in your head? She didn't rise to the bait. Instead, she exhaled a slow stream of smoke and said, You're angry. I get it. But I think you need to start being realistic. I laughed bitterly. Realistic? You've got some nerve, Amanda. She turned to face me, her expression unreadable. Eric, I know you. You don't want a messy divorce. You don't want the kids growing up in some broken home. Neither do I, so let's figure this out. Figure this out? I repeated, incredulous. You want to cheat on me and negotiate the terms of our marriage at the same time? Yes, she said bluntly. Single word stunned me into silence. Amanda leaned forward, the smoke curling around her like some twisted halo. Look, I've thought this through. I'm not leaving you. You're not leaving me. The kids don't deserve that, but what I need, what I want, it doesn't have to ruin everything. If you can just accept it, we can keep this family together. Accept it? I said, my voice shaking with disbelief. You're asking me to stand by while you go off with him whenever you feel like it? It's not like that, she said, her tone patronizing. Now, Dave isn't a threat to you, Eric. He's just an outlet. Something separate. It doesn't change what we have here. What we have here, I repeated, my voice rising. Amanda, there's nothing left here if this is how you treat it. You can't have it both ways. Her eyes narrowed. Why not? Plenty of people do. They just don't talk about it. I'm being honest with you, Eric. I'm trying to make this work. But if you can't handle it, I interrupted, pointing a finger at her. Don't you dare try to make this sound noble. You're not some martyr. You're not saving this family, you're destroying it. She stood up, towering over me, her face cold and hard. Fine. You want to throw it all away? Be my guest. Call a lawyer. But don't think for 1 second that you'll come out of this unscathed. You think the courts care about your feelings? They'll side with the mother. They always do, and you'll lose everything, the kids, the house, everything you've been working so hard for. Her words hit like a sucker punch. I knew she was right. Divorce wouldn't just hurt me, it would tear our kids apart. Lucas and Mia didn't deserve this. Seeing the hesitation on my face, Amanda pressed her advantage. Think about them, Eric. Do you really want to drag them through a custody battle? Split holidays? Birthdays? I don't, I said, feeling trapped, cornered by her logic and the brutal reality of the situation. She sat back down, her tone softening. We can make this work. You just have to let go of this need to control everything. Trust me when I say it doesn't have to change what we have. Trust? The word felt like a cruel joke. I stared at her, my chest tight with anger, grief, and a growing sense of despair. I wanted to scream, to tell her to get out, but I couldn't shake the image of my kids waking up to an empty house, their lives upended because their parents couldn't hold it together. Amanda leaned closer, her voice almost a whisper. Think about it. For them. For us. We've been through too much to let this tear us apart. I didn't respond. Couldn't. Instead, I got up and walked out of the room, leaving her sitting there with her cigarette and her cruel, calculated bargain. I spent the rest of the night in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, wondering how the hell I was supposed to move forward from here. The morning light crept into the room, painting the walls in pale, muted colors. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, Amanda's voice echoed in my mind. Think about it. For them. For us. Her words were poison. They didn't ask for forgiveness, they demanded compliance. The worst part? She wasn't entirely wrong. Divorce would wreck the kids. Shatter the stability they depended on. I hated her for putting me in this impossible position, for twisting my love for our children into a leash around my neck. When I walked into the kitchen, Amanda was already there, dressed impeccably, as if last night's bombshell had never happened. She was making pancakes, flipping them with practiced ease, humming a soft tune. The absurd normalcy of it made my stomach turn. "Morning," she said, her tone bright and casual, like we were just another happy couple starting the day. I ignored her and went for the coffee machine. "Eric," she said, a hint of warning creeping into her voice. "We can't act like strangers around the kids. They'll pick up on it." I spun around to face her, gripping the edge of the counter. "You're unbelievable. You drop a nuke on our marriage and now you're worried about appearances?" She sighed, placing the spatula down with exaggerated patience. "Look, I get that you're upset." "Upset?" I cut in, my voice rising. "Amanda, you blew up our entire life and told me to deal with it. Upset doesn't even begin to cover it." Her expression hardened, the sweetness melting away. "What do you want me to say, Eric? That I'm sorry? That I'll never see him again? Because we both know that's not going to happen. Then what's the point of this conversation?" I snapped. I took a step closer, my eyes narrowing. "Because I do care. Just not in the way you want me to. I'm being realistic, Eric. We can keep this family together if you stop making this about your pride." I laughed bitterly. "This isn't about pride, Amanda. It's about respect. Something you clearly don't have for me, or for us." Before she could respond, the sound of small feet padding into the kitchen broke the tension. Mia and Lucas appeared in the doorway, their sleepy faces lighting up when they saw the pancakes. "Mama, pancakes!" Lucas exclaimed, running to the table. Amanda's face transformed, her coldness replaced by a warm, maternal smile. "That's right, buddy. Go sit down. Breakfast is ready." The sight of her switching so seamlessly between betrayer and mother made my stomach churn. I forced a smile, for the kids' sake, and joined them at the table, though I could barely touch the food in front of me. As the morning wore on, Amanda acted like nothing had happened. She packed the kids' lunches, kissed them on the forehead, and sent them off to school with a cheerful wave. When the front door closed behind them, the mask slipped, and her expression turned serious. "We need to talk about last night," she said, leaning against the kitchen counter. "I don't think there's anything left to say," I replied, my voice flat. "There's a lot left to say," she shot back, her tone sharp. "You need to decide if you're going to work with me on this, or if you're going to make things worse for everyone." "Work with you?" I said, incredulous. "Amanda, you're asking me to be complicit in this insanity. That's not compromise, that's submission." Her eyes flashed with anger. "And what's your alternative, Eric? Blow up the family? Make the kids choose between us? Do you really want that on your conscience?" I stood there, fists clenched, trying to steady my breathing. She had me cornered, and she knew it. Every option felt like a trap. But then a thought crept into my mind, a way out. Maybe a way to turn her own game against her. "You want me to agree to this?" I asked slowly, watching her reaction. "Yes," she said firmly. "Fine," I said, my tone cold and deliberate. "But on one condition. I want access to everything. Your phone, your messages, your schedule. If I'm supposed to accept this, I'm not going to be left in the dark about it." Her eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering across her face. "Why?" "Because if this is going to work, there can't be any more secrets," I said, meeting her gaze with calculated calmness. "If you're so sure this is the best solution, then prove it. Let me see exactly what I'm signing up for." For a moment, she hesitated. I could see the wheels turning in her mind, weighing her options. Finally, she spoke. "Fine," she said, her voice tight. "If that's what it takes to convince you, then fine." She pulled her phone out of her pocket and slid it across the counter toward me. "Here. Look through it. Go ahead. You'll see there's nothing I haven't already told you." I picked up the phone, my heart pounding. This was my chance to gather the proof I needed, find something, anything, that could give me the leverage to take back control. As I unlocked the screen and began scrolling through her messages, I could feel her eyes on me, watching my every move. The game had shifted, and I wasn't going to lose. Amanda's phone felt heavier than it should have, like it carried the weight of everything I didn't want to find. Her calm, unflinching stare only added to the tension as I opened her messages. The first thing I noticed was how clean everything looked, too clean. Her chats were mundane, filled with exchanges about carpools, grocery lists, and PDA meetings. It was a carefully curated version of her life, one designed to be unremarkable. I scrolled through her texts, my fingers tightening around the phone, then I found his name, Dave. The thread was sparse, and nothing outright damning jumped out immediately. Just a few casual messages about work, sprinkled with emojis that now felt mocking in their innocence. But something didn't sit right. Why would she give me access so willingly if this was where the real dirt was? I handed the phone back, feigning defeat. "Looks like you've covered your tracks pretty well," I said coldly. Amanda smirked. "Told you. Nothing to hide." But she wasn't as clever as she thought. The gears in my mind were already turning. I'd seen something, a detail she hadn't accounted for. "You know, Amanda," I said, leaning against the counter, "if you're so confident in all this, maybe you won't mind if I check the phone records too." Her smirk wavered for just a fraction of a second, but it was enough. "Eric, this is ridiculous," she said, her voice tight. "We're not doing this witch hunt." I gave her a cold stare, forcing calmness into my voice. "I don't need anything else from you," I said, my words sharp. "The service provider has all the details I need. I'll just pull the logs." The color drained from her face, and she quickly turned away, busying herself with the dishes. "Do whatever you want," she muttered, her voice muffled under the clatter of plates. "But don't expect to find anything." Her reaction told me everything I needed to know. I left the kitchen, my mind racing. Amanda thought she was in control, but she'd underestimated me. I spent the next few hours combing through our phone records online. It didn't take long to spot the patterns. Late-night calls. Numbers that weren't saved in her contacts but showed up repeatedly, especially on the nights she claimed to be with Grace. And one number stood out above the rest, Dave. I cross-referenced it with a quick search and confirmed what I already knew. This was his personal number. The call history wasn't just frequent, it was obsessive. Long calls during work hours. Multiple calls in a single evening. And then there were the texts, hundreds of them, sometimes spaced just minutes apart. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. This wasn't just casual or fun, as she tried to frame it. This was deliberate. Intense. Calculated. And then I found it. A single voicemail, recorded a week ago. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the play button. When I finally pressed it, his voice filled the silence of the room. "Hey babe. Just checking in. Tonight was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. I know you said you felt guilty, but you don't need to. You're amazing, and you deserve to be happy. Anyway, let me know when you're free again. I miss you already." The room spun. I gripped the desk to steady myself as rage boiled over. The voicemail wasn't just proof of the affair. It was proof of her utter indifference to everything we built. I stormed back downstairs, my pulse pounding in my ears. Amanda was in the living room, scrolling through her tablet like she didn't have a care in the world. "Care to explain this?" I said, my voice low but shaking with barely contained fury. She looked up, her expression guarded. "Explain what?" I held up my phone, playing the voicemail on speaker. Dave's voice echoed through the room, each word driving a knife deeper into the heart of our so-called marriage. Amanda's face shifted, first shock, then anger. "You had no right to dig through that," she said, standing up, her voice rising. "No right?" I snapped. "Amanda, you brought this into our house, into my life. Don't talk to me about rights." Her eyes blazed, and for a moment, I thought she might try to spin another excuse. But instead, she folded her arms, her expression hardening. "Fine," she said. "You caught me. Congratulations, Sherlock. What do you want, a medal?" Her flippancy was the breaking point. I threw the phone onto the couch, the impact startling her. "I want the truth," I shouted. Not this half-assed nonsense about keeping the family together. I want to know why. Why you did this. Why you thought it was okay to throw everything away for him. Amanda glared at me, her voice sharp as a knife. Because I needed more, Eric. I'm tired of feeling invisible. I'm tired of being stuck in a life where I'm just mom and wife and nothing else. Dave, he sees me. He reminds me that I'm still alive. Her words hit harder than any physical blow could. And I don't? I asked, my voice cracking under the weight of her betrayal. After everything I've done for this family, for you, how is that not enough? She hesitated, her anger giving way to something resembling guilt. But it was fleeting. It's not about you, Eric. It's about me. And I'm not going to apologize for wanting to feel something again. I stared at her, the woman I thought I knew now a stranger standing in my living room. My mind raced, torn between the desire to fight for the family we built and the overwhelming urge to walk away from this nightmare. For now, though, I needed time. Time to think. Time to plan. Because one thing was certain, Amanda might think she had the upper hand, but this wasn't over. The house felt colder the next day, even with the sun streaming through the windows. The kids' laughter echoed faintly as they played in the backyard, but it didn't warm the place the way it used to. Amanda moved through the house like nothing had happened, her usual routines unaffected by the turmoil beneath the surface. It was infuriating, the way she carried on as though everything was fine. I couldn't let her think she'd won. That voicemail had shattered the illusion. The gloves were off now. It wasn't just proof of the affair. It was proof that Amanda had created her own reality, where her selfish desires took precedence over everything else. And now, she expected me to silently endure it. I spent the day gathering myself. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but I couldn't let it control me. If Amanda thought she could manipulate me into compliance, she was about to learn how wrong she was. By the time dinner rolled around, I had a plan. We sat at the table. The kids chatted about their day. Amanda was smiling, engaging with them like she was the perfect mother. I played along, keeping my tone light, my expression neutral, but my mind was racing. After the kids went to bed, I found her in the living room. She was curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone with a glass of wine in hand. "We need to talk," I said, standing in the doorway. She didn't look up. "We've already talked, Eric. I don't know what else there is to say." "Oh, I think there's plenty," I replied, stepping into the room. "For starters, I've been doing some thinking about what you said last night." That got her attention. She set her phone down, tilting her head as she studied me. "And?" she asked. "I've decided you're right," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "We can't let this destroy the family. So I'm willing to consider your arrangement." Her eyes narrowed, suspicion flashing across her face. "Really? Just like that?" "Not just like that," I said, sitting down across from her. "But I've been thinking about the kids. They don't deserve to suffer because of this. If this is what it takes to keep them from losing their family, then fine. I'll deal with it." She watched me carefully, her expression unreadable. "What's the catch?" "No catch," I said, shaking my head. "But if this is going to work, we need rules." "Rules?" she repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Rules," I said firmly. "If you're serious about keeping this family together, then there can't be any more surprises. No lies. No sneaking around. I need to know where you are, who you're with, and when you're coming home." She smirked. "So you want to micromanage my life now?" "I want transparency," I said, my tone cold. "If this is the new reality you're forcing on me, then I'm not going into it blind. You said you wanted honesty. Prove it." Amanda leaned back, her smirk fading into a thoughtful frown. "Fine," she said after a long pause. "If that's what it takes to make you feel better, then fine. But you need to understand something, Eric. This isn't about control. It's about trust." "Trust?" The word hung in the air like a bad joke. I didn't respond, knowing it would only start another argument. Instead, I nodded. "Good. Then we're on the same page. She picked up her phone and resumed scrolling, clearly considering the conversation over. But as I walked out of the room, a grim satisfaction settled over me. I wasn't on the same page as Amanda. Not even close. While she thought she was setting the terms of this arrangement, I was already a step ahead. I'd spent the day making preparations, consulting with a lawyer, securing access to every shared account, and compiling a digital trail of her infidelity. Amanda might think she was holding all the cards, but I wasn't about to let her gamble away everything we built without a fight. The storm wasn't over. It was just beginning. The next morning, Amanda was up before me, humming to herself as she prepared breakfast. She seemed lighter, almost smug, like she believed the worst was behind us. It disgusted me. I watched her from the doorway for a moment, marveling at how easily she could switch between roles: doting mother, deceitful wife, unrepentant manipulator. "Morning," I said, stepping into the kitchen. "Morning," she replied without turning around. "Coffee's ready." I poured myself a cup, sitting down at the table as she plated pancakes for the kids. Mia and Lucas came bounding down the stairs moments later, and the usual morning chaos took over. But beneath the surface, a tension hung between Amanda and me, unspoken but undeniable. When the kids were out the door and off to school, I leaned back in my chair, swirling the coffee in my mug. "We should talk more about this arrangement," I said casually. Amanda looked up from her phone, her expression neutral. "We already talked. What more is there to say?" "Well," I began, setting the mug down, "if we're going to make this work, I think we need to be clear about boundaries. Transparency, like I said." She narrowed her eyes. I leaned forward, eyes locking with hers. "What kind of boundaries?" "I want us to be honest about what this means for the future," I said, my voice steady, the words deliberate. "Are you planning to keep this thing with Dave going indefinitely, or is there an end date?" Amanda's lips tightened, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of unease in her expression. "I don't know," she admitted, her gaze dropping. "I haven't thought that far ahead. Right now, it's just what I need." "What you need?" I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. "And what about what I need? What about the kids? Does that factor into your plans at all?" Her face hardened. "Of course it does. But you're acting like I've abandoned you, and I haven't. I'm still here, Eric. I'm still their mother. I still love you." "Don't," I interrupted, my voice sharp. "Don't say you love me. Not after what you've done." She flinched but quickly recovered, crossing her arms. "This isn't about love. It's about survival. And if you can't see that, maybe you're not as perfect as you think you are." Her deflection was almost impressive. Almost. But I wasn't going to let her derail this conversation. "You want survival?" I said, my voice cold. "Fine. Let's talk about survival. About how we keep this family intact while you play house with another man. You want me to go along with this? Then you're going to give me something in return." Amanda's eyebrows shot up. "Something in return? What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about leverage," I said, my tone unwavering. "You're asking me to make the biggest compromise of my life, so you're going to give me the security I need to protect myself and the kids." Her eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" "It means I want it in writing," I said, my voice steady. "A post-nuptial agreement. If this arrangement blows up in our faces, I'm not going to be left with nothing." "You want my cooperation? Then you're going to guarantee that the kids stay with me if this marriage falls apart." Her face went pale. Her confident facade cracked. "You're out of your mind," she said, shaking her head. "You really think I'm going to sign something like that?" "You don't have a choice," I said, standing up. "You're the one who wanted this arrangement. You're the one who's gambling with our family. If you're so sure this is the right thing, you shouldn't have a problem putting it on paper." She glared at me, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the counter. "This is blackmail." "No," I said, walking past her toward the door. "This is survival." I left her standing there, her breath coming in short, angry bursts. The power dynamic had shifted, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had some control. The truth was, I didn't want this arrangement any more than she did. But I wasn't about to let her dictate the terms of my life without a fight. If Amanda thought she could manipulate me into submission, she was in for a rude awakening. And if she refused to play by my rules, I was ready for that too. Amanda didn't speak to me for the rest of the day. The tension in the house was suffocating, but I didn't care. I had drawn my line in the sand, and now it was her move. She spent hours locked in the bedroom, occasionally emerging to grab her phone or refill her wine glass. Her silence was louder than any argument we could have had. By the time evening rolled around, I was mentally exhausted, but I knew better than to let my guard down. Amanda was calculating. She wasn't going to let this power shift go unanswered. Around 9 p.m., while I was in the living room going through emails, she finally came downstairs. Her expression was unreadable, cool, detached, as if she were about to negotiate a business deal. "Let's talk," she said, standing with her arms crossed. I set my laptop aside, leaning back in the chair. "I'm listening." Amanda walked to the couch, sitting across from me. She took a deep breath, her hands folded in her lap. "I thought about what you said about the post-nup." I didn't respond, waiting for her to reveal her angle. "I don't like it," she continued. "It feels manipulative, like you're using this situation to punish me." "Punish you?" I raised an eyebrow. "Amanda, you brought this on yourself. I'm just trying to protect what's left of this family." She narrowed her eyes but pressed on. "Fine. If it makes you feel better, I'll sign it. But I have conditions." "Conditions?" I repeated, the edge in my voice sharpening. "Yes," she said firmly. "If we're going to make this work, it has to be fair. You don't get to dictate everything just because you're angry." "Fair?" I laughed bitterly. "Amanda, you're asking me to live in a marriage where you have a boyfriend on the side, and now you want—" She rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic. I'm trying to compromise here, Eric. If you want the post-nup, fine, but we both agree that it's just insurance. It doesn't mean we're preparing for divorce. It doesn't change the fact that we're staying together for the kids." Her ability to twist the narrative was almost impressive. "Almost." "Fine," I said, my tone cold. "What are your conditions?" Amanda hesitated, as if carefully choosing her words. "First, no more prying into my private life. If I'm agreeing to this, then I deserve the freedom to handle things my way." I clenched my jaw, barely suppressing the urge to lash out. "You want privacy while you cheat on me? That's rich." "This isn't about cheating, Eric," she snapped, her voice rising. "It's about boundaries. You want a post-nup? Then I need to know that you're not going to spy on me or try to sabotage my life." Her audacity was staggering, but I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "What else?" "Second," she said, her tone softening, "we keep this between us. The kids don't need to know. Our friends don't need to know. We present a united front, no matter what." That one stung. I had no intention of airing our dirty laundry, but hearing her demand silence felt like another betrayal. "And third," she said, leaning forward, "you need to start focusing on this marriage again. You've been so consumed with work and everything else that you've forgotten how to be my partner. If you want me to stay, you have to show me that you still care." My head snapped back in disbelief. "You're unbelievable. You cheat on me, lie to my face, and then have the nerve to demand that I fix this marriage?" Amanda's gaze was steady, her voice calm. "If you don't want to fix it, Eric, then what are we even doing here?" I stared at her, my heart pounding with anger and frustration. I couldn't believe the gall of this woman, the way she could manipulate, gaslight, and twist every situation to suit her needs. "You know what, Amanda?" I said, standing up. "You want your conditions? Fine, I'll play along. But don't think for a second that I'm doing this for you. This is for the kids. And the moment this arrangement becomes more than I can stomach, it's over." She stood up too, meeting my gaze. "Fair enough." Neither of us moved. The silence crackled between us like static as she turned to leave the room. I spoke again, my voice firm. One more thing. Amanda paused, glancing over her shoulder. What? I'll be having my own lawyer draft the post-nup, I said, my tone unyielding. And you'll sign it without question. Otherwise, there's no deal. Her jaw tightened, but she nodded. Fine. When she walked out, I sank back into the chair, my hands trembling. I didn't feel victorious. This wasn't a win. It was survival, pure and simple. But deep down, I knew one thing for certain. Amanda's control over me was slipping, and I wasn't going to let her get it back. The next day, I made the first move. While Amanda went about her routine with her usual air of self-assured detachment, I was already in motion. The post-nuptial agreement wasn't just a precaution, it was my weapon. The beginning of my escape plan. I scheduled an immediate meeting with a lawyer, someone recommended by a trusted friend. It was discreet, professional, and focused. The attorney, a sharp woman named Susan, listened intently as I laid out my situation. Her expression was unreadable, but her questions incisive. So let me get this straight, she said, her pen tapping against her notebook. Your wife is openly having an affair, wants to keep the marriage intact for appearances, and expects you to agree to these terms without objection? That about sums it up, I replied, feeling a fresh wave of anger as I said the words aloud. Susan nodded, her lips pressing into a thin line. Eric, you're in a strong position here, but this will require strategy. The post-nup is a good start. It'll ensure it protects you financially and secures primary custody of your children if the marriage ends. But we'll also include clauses that make it difficult for her to claim anything more should she decide to leave. Does she know you're consulting with me? She asked. No, I said quickly. She thinks I'm drafting it myself or finding some generic template online. I need this to look like I'm still playing along. Good, Susan said, her tone firm. Keep it that way. If she feels cornered too soon, she might lash out or take preemptive action. We spent the next hour drafting the framework for the agreement. Susan was meticulous, ensuring that every clause was airtight. By the time I left her office, I felt a flicker of hope, something I hadn't felt in weeks. Back at home, Amanda was waiting in the kitchen. Busy day? She asked, her tone light, but the underlying tension was palpable. Yeah, I replied, casually dropping my keys on the counter. Had some things to take care of. She didn't press further, but her eyes lingered on me for a moment before she returned to her phone. I could tell she was trying to read me, trying to gauge whether I was still under her thumb. I went upstairs, pretending to unwind, but my mind was racing. I couldn't let her see the cracks in my facade, not yet. The next few days passed in a tense dance of civility. Amanda seemed to be testing the waters, throwing out little jabs and remarks to see how I'd react. But I didn't take the bait. Instead, I played my role, calm, cooperative, and seemingly resigned to her terms. Finally, the day came when the draft of the post-nuptial agreement was ready. Susan had outdone herself. The document was a fortress, one that protected me and the kids while leaving Amanda with little leverage. I printed a copy, tucked it into a folder, and brought it home. After dinner, I handed it to her. What's this? Amanda asked, eyeing the folder suspiciously. The post-nup, I said, keeping my tone even. I had it drafted. Take your time reviewing it, but I'll need your signature by the end of the week. She opened the folder, scanning the pages. Her expression shifted as she read, her eyes narrowing. This is comprehensive, she said slowly. It needs to be, I replied, folding my arms. This is about protecting the kids, Amanda, and making sure this arrangement doesn't destroy everything else in the process. She looked up at me, her gaze sharp. You're serious about this? Dead serious, I said, meeting her eyes for a moment. We just stared at each other, the silence thick with unspoken tension. Then she closed the folder and set it on the table. I'll look it over, she said curtly. Good, I said, turning to leave the room. But as I walked away, her voice stopped me. Eric, I turned back. "You've changed," she said, her tone almost accusatory. "You're not as easy to read anymore." "Maybe I've just had enough," I replied, my voice steady. "Maybe it's time I stopped letting you call all the shots." Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't respond. I went upstairs, closing the bedroom door behind me. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of control returning to my life. Amanda might have thought she held all the cards, but I was done playing by her rules. The game had shifted, and this time, I was determined to win. The next morning, the air in the house felt heavier, as if the tension between Amanda and me had settled into the walls. She didn't mention the posting up at breakfast, didn't bring it up when we crossed paths throughout the day. But I could tell it was on her mind. She was quieter, more cautious, as though carefully calculating her next move. By the evening, the silence was unbearable. The kids had been tucked into bed, and I was in the living room nursing a drink and scrolling through emails when Amanda walked in. She was holding the folder containing the post-nup, her expression unreadable. "We need to talk," she said, setting the folder down on the coffee table. I gestured to the chair across from me. "Go ahead." Amanda didn't sit. She stood there, arms crossed, her eyes fixed on me. "I've read the agreement," she said, her tone clipped. "And?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "It's one-sided," she snapped. "You want me to sign something that strips me of any leverage in this marriage. This isn't an agreement, Eric. It's a power grab." I leaned back in my chair, swirling the glass in my hand. "It's protection for me. For the kids. You want this arrangement to work? Then you need to prove you're serious about keeping this family intact." Her jaw tightened, her eyes flashing with anger. "Don't pretend this is about the kids. This is about control. About you trying to punish me for something you don't understand. Don't I?" I shot back, setting the glass down with a loud clink. "Amanda, you brought this mess into our lives. You're the one who decided to blow up our marriage for your needs, and now you're mad because I won't just roll over and let you dictate the terms?" She took a step closer, her voice rising. "You think you're so righteous, Eric? Like you've been the perfect husband all these years. Where were you when I felt invisible? When I was begging for connection, and all you cared about was work and the bills and keeping up appearances?" I stood up, my own anger flaring. "Where was I? I was keeping this family afloat, Amanda, while you were out chasing connection. I was sacrificing everything to give you the life you wanted. Don't you dare," she hissed, her voice trembling. "Don't you dare act like you've been some kind of martyr. You've been emotionally absent for years, Eric. This didn't happen overnight." Her words hit like a slap, but I refused to back down. "And you think running to Dave was the solution?" I challenged. "You think sneaking around, lying, and treating me like a backup plan is going to fix anything?" Amanda laughed bitterly, the sound sharp and cutting. "You're so focused on being the victim that you can't see the truth. You've been checked out of this marriage for a long time, Eric. Dave didn't steal me from you. You pushed me away." The room fell silent, her words hanging in the air like smoke. For a moment neither of us spoke. The weight of everything we'd been avoiding finally crashed down on us. "I'm not signing it," she said finally, her voice quieter. "Not unless you're willing to admit your part in this," I said, my voice a controlled fury. She tilted her head slightly, as if considering my words. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of regret in her eyes, but it was gone just as quickly, replaced by the same cold determination that had taken over her in recent months. "This isn't about blame, Eric," she said, her tone almost condescending. "It's about moving forward. If you can't see that, then maybe you're the one destroying this family." I stared at her, my chest tight with a mixture of anger, sadness, and disbelief. How had it come to this? How had the woman I once loved turned into this unrecognizable stranger? "You're unbelievable," I said, my voice shaking. "You want me to bend over backward to accommodate your lies, your betrayal, and now you're trying to gaslight me into thinking it's my fault?" Amanda's lips curled into a bitter smile. "If that's how you see it, Eric, maybe this marriage really is over. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. For the first time, the possibility of ending it all felt real, tangible. But I wasn't going to let her take the narrative and twist it to suit her. Not anymore. Maybe it is, I said quietly, meeting her gaze. But if it ends, it'll be on my terms, not yours. Her eyes widened slightly, but she quickly masked her surprise with a cold, calculating expression. We'll see about that, she said, turning on her heel and leaving the room. As I stood there alone, the realization hit me like a freight train. The woman I married was gone, and the fight to protect what little I had left was just beginning. The following days felt like a slow march toward an inevitable conclusion. Amanda barely spoke to me, but I could feel her scheming, the gears in her mind turning as she tried to figure out her next move. Meanwhile, I worked quietly but relentlessly, lining up every piece I needed to secure my future and protect the kids. The post-nuptial agreement had been a spark, but now I needed the fire to end this nightmare once and for all. On Friday morning, Amanda called out from the kitchen as I was getting ready for work. Eric, we need to have a serious discussion tonight. Don't be late. Her tone was clipped, her words more of a command than a request. I nodded without looking at her. I'll be home all day, I said, though I could feel the weight of what was coming. This wasn't just another argument. Amanda had finally realized she was losing control, and tonight would be her attempt to seize it back. But I wasn't afraid. I had prepared for this. When I got home that evening, the kids were already at my mom's for the weekend, Amanda's doing, I was sure. The house was eerily quiet as I stepped inside, the air heavy with tension. Amanda was in the living room, sitting stiffly on the couch with a glass of wine in hand. Sit, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. I sat, folding my hands in my lap, my face calm. What's this about? Amanda set her glass down and leaned forward. I thought about the post-nup, about everything, and I'm willing to make some concessions if you're willing to meet me halfway. I raised an eyebrow. Meet you halfway? After everything you've done, you still think you're in a position to negotiate? Her expression hardened, but she pressed on. I'm not going to sign away my rights, Eric. I won't do that to myself or the kids. But if we can agree to keep things civil, I'm willing to end things on amicable terms. The room tilted, the weight of her words settling on me. End things? I repeated, my voice sharp. You're talking about divorce now? Yes, she said, her voice steady. It's clear this isn't working. We've been fighting for weeks, and it's toxic for everyone involved. I think it's time we both admit this marriage is over. I laughed, the sound bitter and hollow. You've been stringing me along for weeks, insisting we stay together for the kids, and now, when you realize you can't control me anymore, you want to walk away? Her eyes narrowed. I'm trying to do the right thing, Eric. If you can't see that. No, I interrupted, standing up. You're not doing the right thing. You're doing the selfish thing, just like you've been doing all along. She stood too, her posture rigid, her eyes blazing. And what about you? You think you're innocent in all this? You've been cold and distant for years, and now you're acting like I'm the only one to blame. I may not be perfect, I said, my voice rising, but I didn't betray my family. I didn't lie. I didn't bring someone else into this marriage and expect you to just accept it. Her mouth opened as if to retort, but I didn't give her the chance. You want to end it? I said, my tone cold. Fine, but you're going to do it my way. I've already consulted with a lawyer. I have proof of your affair, and I have the post-nup ready to protect the kids. If you think you're walking away with anything more than what you came into this marriage with, you're delusional. Amanda's face turned pale, the color draining from her cheeks. You wouldn't, she stammered. I would, I said, stepping closer. You've underestimated me for years, Amanda. But not anymore. She stared at me, her confidence crumbling, her mask of control slipping for the first time. Eric, let's not make this ugly, she said, her voice trembling. Think about the kids. I am thinking about the kids, I said firmly. That's why I'm not letting you drag this out any longer. You want out? Then we do it now on my terms. The silence between us was deafening. Finally, Amanda sank back onto the couch, her hands trembling as she reached for her wine glass. What happened to us? She whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't answer. I didn't have an answer. The woman I loved was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. As I turned to leave, I paused at the doorway, glancing back at her one last time. I'll have the papers ready by Monday, I said. If you don't sign them, we'll let the courts decide. She didn't respond. Her gaze was fixed on the floor. I walked upstairs, closing the door to the guest room behind me. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. The battle was over. Amanda's reign of manipulation and betrayal had finally come to an end, and for the first time, I could see a future, one where I rebuilt my life, stronger and freer than before.